Hello, and welcome back to Sustainability Chats with Friends. I'm so excited to be joined here today with Tess from Koiwolf, which is a cotton bikini and clothing brand. And so, yeah, please could you just say a few words about who you are and your background and stuff like that?
Hello, I'm also very excited to be here. I am, well, definitely passionate about sustainable fashion, which is why I started this brand, which is an all natural swimwear line to give alternatives to synthetic bathing suits, which the understanding of the materials that we put on our body is seemingly still kind of under the radar. And so my endeavor has been creating something sustainable, like eco-conscious in that it's like natural plant fibers, but also good for the body. So good for the body and the planet. And yeah, it's expanded into apparel. So yeah, I'm here just figuring out how to make something like that work in a modern day in the times that we have
Right.
right now.
Yeah, it's so cool. I literally love it because I think I remember telling you last time we chatted that it's so hard to find organic fiber bikinis and swimwear. And also everything is so toxic for your body, especially like you were saying, like in the heat and stuff like that. When it
Mhm.
heats up, all of the polymers and nasty toxic chemicals and stuff just leach out.
Mhm. Yeah, I myself, I don't even know the full extent and the science and all of this. I think it's also one of those things that like what we don't want to know. Like it's better to
Yeah.
not know because
Yeah.
it's just adding to this accumulation of overwhelm of everything that we're exposed to is slowly killing us.
Right.
Uh, and fortunately, we're like a really adaptable species, but nonetheless, I think that a lot of people are starting to experience how critical it is to be aware, and then it kind of opens up this whole Pandora's box of like, okay, well, with this awareness, now I feel like I'm in a huge position of powerlessness because the options, like you said, are so few. And even for a business, it's so challenging to understand just business economics and
Mhm.
like modalities that actually set a business up to thrive versus just struggle for years and years. And
Right.
with that process, it's also a really daunting endeavor that I think, again, overwhelming and like, okay, whatever. Where's my plastic bikini? I'm just gonna revert back and go back into denial and ignorance because it's just easier that way at times.
Yeah. At times it definitely is easier. I feel like it's also quite powerful though, knowing more. Because then at least that way, like what you're doing, like you can act on it, which is super cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely finding a balance, I think, because especially if you're inclined to be neurotic or perfectionist about something, like then you kind of live your days a little bit too preoccupied with every little like tick and boo and what like, "Oh gosh, is this affecting me?" And then you get into your grocery list and then the water that's coming out of your tap, and it's like, "Oh gosh." So, 100%, I am happy to be on this journey, and I think the beginning of it, there was too much pressure to, like, just resolve it all overnight.
Mm.
So now I'm like, "Well, I guess my body can withstand some
Right.
nasty shit, so I'll just also take it day by day and respect that this is where we're all at, and it's like a slow, long game to get to the next better place.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've definitely been there with the being super neurotic about everything that I eat and like put on my body and stuff. But yeah, I think it definitely is a long game. And I mean, I've had a few friends approach me and kind of ask like what they can do to be more sustainable. And I've kind of outlined a few things, but then in having those conversations and also just realizing it within myself, like if you go to the extreme and cut out all of these things, then it doesn't really last as long, I don't find. Whereas if you do little changes frequently, then I've noticed that within the friends who have come to me and then kind of update me or whatever in like a year or whatever it is, I've noticed that they keep up those positives behavior changes instead of just throwing it
Mhm.
all out the window after a month or whatever.
Yeah, I feel that. That's like any goal, like in any
Yeah,
category of life. Like you kind of have to really set yourself up for success by setting the bar really low. And then once you've mastered the tiniest thing, then you're like, oh, okay, I have capacity for one more tiny thing. And it's very
right.
incremental. And and yeah, because it's too easy to just put the whole world on your shoulders and be like, well, if I'm not setting this example, then who will? And
Yeah.
then it becomes really isolating as well, because then you have to be, I don't know, my own inclination has been like wanting to police others because now it's my responsibility to make this change. And so I have to be the one to inform everyone and be the perfect example and show that it can be done. And then I've just found that it can't be done just myself alone, no matter how ambitious I am. It ultimately is really overzealous to take all of that on and then it's yeah, in its own way kinda ostracizing because other people are like, "Oh, wait, you're gonna be judging me because I'm just doing my thing," and, you don't wanna create that divide you wanna make
Yeah.
it so that it's like, "No, there's no shame in wherever we're all
100%.
at." We all
Yeah.
just like, if you can open your mind to something that's alternative and consider it and contemplate that, that's the great first step, and that we can do that all with compassion for ourselves and one another rather than going so hyper vigilant about everything.
Yeah. I mean, if you have awareness, you're already well onto the journey, I think. Like I noticed that also through this podcast, so many people, or I reached out to, when I was first starting this, I reached out to a few friends. I was like, hey, do you guys want to come chat with me? And most of them were like, no, like I don't know enough. And I was like, but you know something. And like that awareness is so important. That's like a good first seed. And then you can like blossom and go from there, you know? But I think
Oh,
it's
I feel
so
that.
limiting when people are like, oh, well, you're the expert in this area. You need to be doing everything perfectly. Because then it doesn't allow for, I don't think it allows for as much growth because people are scared to talk and scared to show their real lifestyle. So then you can't see how they're actually navigating life as a normal person. And so I don't think that you can learn as
Totally.
much.
Yeah, no, I feel that a lot and I love that you are viewing all of this in that way that you're already recognizing like how to kind of minimize that barrier of entry for people and what you were conveying is that we want to know where we're all at. Like you can't
Yeah.
get from point B without knowing what your point A is. And so if we're not if we're already expecting everyone to be at point B,
Mm.
then like you said, your friend's reaction to being like, "No, I'm not worthy or qualified to be speaking on anything," but we're all qualified because it's all of our lives. We're all here just figuring it out. Like we're all in the dark. We don't know what's going
Yeah.
on as far as like how to do a complete overhaul. And more than anything, people just need to be like open and unapologetic to a certain extent of where they're at because it's not anyone's fault. We entered into this situation as it was, and it's maybe an interesting project to
Yeah.
try and improve oneself as well as the collective.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like we can't change the world that we were born into. I mean, what is it? Hundreds of years, thousands of years worth of culture and societal
I
building. We can't
know.
just suddenly change that.
But
Maybe
as women, we're
try.
like, no, we could do it. Like, I'm a woman, so I probably could do it.
Literally, step by step, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we are powerful. It's also just we also wanna just live life a little bit too. That's also important. Just have some fun and don't take it all so seriously because at the end of the day, like, you're it's gonna impact what it's gonna impact, and you don't have control over it all. So just make sure you're enjoying what you're contributing, how you're contributing, enjoy that, and like, and yeah, relax about it because it can be really stressful in my own experience.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, first of all, 100%, yeah, do what's fun. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. But then how did you kind of get involved with it?
Well, I've always been really passionate about the environment. Like nature is a very healing thing for me. It's become something that I've realized is critical in my lifestyle. And then especially traveling has allowed me to see, I guess, coming from Canada, a lot of waste management is not as in your face. Like whatever problems occur with that, there's systems in place to make it so you don't even. So there is like a throw away. Like you can get rid of it and never see your things ever again. Whereas in Mexico, for example, there's just a whole other like survival is way more important than waste management. And since there isn't a lot of infrastructure supporting anyone to do it efficiently, especially in more impoverished areas, it's been shocking to me that the waste is just everywhere and it's just like polluting such beautiful spaces. And for my own selfish reasons, I don't want to look at nasty garbage in the ocean or on a beautiful waterfall. And I think that like a long time ago, that was like the initial inspiration. Like I've always wanted to use creativity and art to convey the messages that would be educational rather than again, not shaming or creating more divide, but actually enact more passion to preserve and conserve. And then that's been kind of its own ongoing journey of different projects. And then Koiwolf has been the spin-off of that in the last 5 or 6 years where um yeah, just living in a surf town, living in a bikini every day, you realize that those leaching microplastics are just going into your most important portals. And if you start on any kind of wellness journey, whether it's like nutrition or like mental health, you start realizing it's all connected and that if you're starting to take care of one part of your being or your vessel, then you realize, well, then I need to also be considering these other factors. Otherwise, it's kind of just a waste of time in its own sense because the other things just all leak into each other. So, fashion is in my background and I've been passionate about for a long time. So, I figured what better way to marry the two and find some alternative for humans to like mainly use the product to educate in like a beautiful way more than anything. Um, and that's kind of resulted in its own interesting uncover like discovery of I don't know how people interact with product, especially when they're when they're very novel. The mass, I guess, just is so adverse to change. And really the majority of people never want to be the first. They never want to be like as soon as it's already well established, anything, any product or any kind of change, then people tend to want to get on board, but it kind of requires a lot if it's something brand new. And in many ways, that's maybe good for our species survival. Like, take it slow. Like, don't just jump on board with like the first crazy idea. But it's interesting to see how to educate a market through something that no one's ever seen before, and that there's a lot of skepticism that comes with that, and I guess I just see that as kind of a metaphor for the whole sustainable movement,
Yeah.
um, that, yeah, people like their comfort and their familiarity, and even if it's toxic and, like, killing us. Like, "No, stick to the pesticide, I prefer it."
Yeah. I think convenience too also plays into that
Huge.
massively.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is super cool though. I love that you're trying to educate people through clothing and also Like you say, like cotton bikinis. Like no one does cotton bikinis.
Yeah.
I was trying to have a search too, and like no one does it. I came across one, but even they have like elasticated waistbands and stuff like that, which I don't think you have elasticated waistbands, right?
No, I've gone so purist. Like what what referring back to like, yes, a little neurotic, maybe a little bit too pure. Like some a lot it was been recommended many times. Like, no, you should probably add some elastic in it somewhere to ensure gaping doesn't occur. I'm like, no, we're making this so 100% natural and it's come to the point where I'm like, "No, I'm happy with these designs, and they are beautiful, and they have their own, like, elegance and beauty and sexiness because they're just very free and, like yeah, completely unique." And this unique aspect to me is, like, how any woman can start to connect with their own unique beauty because they're not trying to conform or fit in with the rest. They're actually like feeling worthy enough to make a statement piece and to honor their body as it is. And the suits are designed to really tie to your natural form. And since there's no elastic, they're not squeezing or pinching, they're just swaddling in this very kind of like jungle sexy way. So,
I love that.
yeah,
I absolutely
I
love
like
that.
it too.
I think we need more purists as well.
I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah. Because yeah, I love it. I think it's so great. I think I'm also similar to you in that respect, like neurotic about every detail, I guess, in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it just again goes back to how it obviously serves that people are not purists in their own
Yeah.
ways because again, like just the diversity of humanity makes it so we're not all the same and somebody needs a job. I'll be the purest one. And then for everything else, like I guess it's just so hard to be purist because there's just so much out there. Like there's just so much to enjoy. There's so much to create with. And yeah, then we can really get into like a whole other existential conversation about like the whole bigger picture of it all. Like, what is it all for? And, like the duality of things that it's all just as it should be. But yeah, I definitely get really excited meeting people such as yourself who I sense that you also have this ability to envision something that is pure and really not as inclined to be corrupt or like compromise the integrity for profit or for trend or anything like that, that you actually you feel that there's this real ability to get, I don't know, maybe get everything into this mm, just heaven on earth kind of idea where
Yeah.
it's all just so pure and perfect.
I definitely believe it's possible. I mean, I'm an absolute dreamer in that respect. I have
Same.
my
That's
rational
good.
side, and I'm like, okay, I can bring the rational side in. I can look at like the financials and stuff, but my core is very much anything's possible. It's going to be super sustainable.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Just regarding this consultancy agency that you're building, I find it such a valuable service, and I'm curious to know a bit more about it and um, like how, like in the range of how you initially want to, or how you initially consult a business, and depending on what stage they're in, and what is your ideal client? Do you see it as someone that's established and has things running, and then you can come in and provide alternative systems that can help transition them into more sustainable operations? Or do you prefer like where businesses are kind of at the ground up and they can build off of a foundation of sustainability?
Hmm. I think it depends. I love working with everyone and anyone. What I find with the companies that are more established, it's usually coming up with plans that also align with their marketing. And so it's kind of coming up with these packaging initiatives and stuff like that that are then really good for marketing and stuff like that. So that's what I kind of notice more with the more mature brands. But then with the startups, and I've mostly worked with startups, it's fun because they're so willing and wanting to be more sustainable. And so you can give all of these fun recommendations. I really enjoy researching things for people and helping them establish their supply chain and stuff like that. And so that's exciting because you can kind of picture what the possibility could be. And I find that with startups, there are a lot of dreamers in there. So I think I naturally get along really well with them. But what I was going to say is one of the offerings that I have is a sustainability action plan, and it's tailored. So I have is a series of calls. I get to know usually the CEO well, or well enough to understand what their aspirations, visions, dreams are in terms of sustainability in their business. And then from there, I kind of distill it down into three main initiatives or action points, and then really flesh those out. And so that plan I like because it works for any business or any organization. I even think it could work for individuals as well, which is something I've been really wanting to try out. So when you're asking me like who my dream clients are, it's like, yes, it's absolutely the fashion and textile brands and suppliers, manufacturers, all of that. But then also a part of me would really like to work with CEOs and influencers and celebrities to help make their lifestyles more sustainable. Because I think that if you can target those people, it will then trickle down into the other areas of their life. And so I think that it's an efficient way of trying to make people more sustainable. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think also what a lot of people do, or at least what the trend is at the moment, is to focus in on greenhouse gas emissions and greenhouse gas accounting, which I think is a beneficial thing to do. And it's one of the, not easier, but it's one of the areas that people seem to have data around so you can quantify it. And there are several different methods to use to actually come up with results. So even if you don't have like the wattage that your light bulb uses or whatever, you can use the amount of money that you spend on it. So there are different methods. So it's quite, again, not easy, but more easy than some of the other options to kind of compare. So I think that that's a great thing. But I also like taking like the more holistic approach. So looking at biodiversity, kind of who you're impacting in your supply chain, the social side as well, land use, water use, I guess eutrophication kind of goes into that also. So I like looking at it all from the planetary boundaries perspective as well, and not
Yeah.
just the greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah. 100%. It's kind of confusing that, well, any approach is so two-dimensional when it's like, hello, we've got
Yeah.
like everything that you just laid out is exactly like what if you want to solve one issue, then you just have another one waiting at on the other end of the spectrum that's often contradicting it. And so you have to consider all things to make a real, genuine impact, which
Right. It's
again
like
is
you were saying with the body.
yeah, yeah,
It's just like that.
yeah, exactly. Well, I love that you're considering like the whole spectrum, like business down to individuals, because all of us need it's a huge investment to try and figure out how to be more sustainable. It requires a ton of research, and then as soon as you
Yeah,
start
so much
going down
research.
that rabbit hole, yeah, you're left realizing, like, again, everything contradicts itself. So just when I think I'm doing the right thing in this area, well, it's meaningless because of these aspects that weren't considered. And again, I don't think anything can be perfect, but just the ability to reduce anything for all of the billions of people and create a bit more equality among us
Mm.
all is at this point kind of like the initial stepping stones that we can utilize.
Yeah, for
So
sure. And I think also with that, like some of the techniques that exist today to measure environmental footprints, social footprints, actually there aren't that many for social footprint, but there are some. There's like the social life cycle assessment and stuff. I remember a professor saying that less people use it because you can't necessarily quantify everything. And so some of the recommendations for social improvement is more qualitative and kind of intuitive.
Mm,
And so I think that it's interesting being able to balance both and do a mix of quantitative and qualitative assessments and analyses and stuff, and giving people that kind of plan just so that then they have it and they're like, oh, okay, cool. So this is where I'm at now. This is where I'm going. And actually, I understand why this makes sense. I wouldn't have been able to measure this, but I can clearly see that this is an area that I need to improve on.
yes, yes,
Or even this is
exactly.
something I'm doing really well. Like, well done, pat on the
Yeah.
back. Like, I'm doing this really, really well.
Oh, yeah, that's actually really underestimated how powerful that is. Just that, like, making that mandatory to acknowledge the progress.
Yeah.
And I would love to do some kind of collaboration with you at some point because I want to do these sustainability kits that are kind
Oh,
of zero
cool.
waste oriented. That
Okay.
would that would be something that's kind of just an easy way where you can carry a reusable cup and you can carry your
Mm.
reusable utensil, then your grocery bags, and that they're like cute. And again, just like promote that mentality where when I leave the house, I just have this kit that at some point of the day, I'm probably going to want to refill something or
Right.
utilize it. And if we all just had a bit more of that kind of lifestyle normalized rather than the disposable lifestyle normalized, then we wouldn't be the weird people bringing our like packed lunch to work, that we would be like
You're right.
among everybody that's like, no, this is better. And we like it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I always forget also that that is not something that everyone does. I love it though. The other day, I got a message from a friend who I can't remember when I met up with her. It was probably 8 months to a year ago, something like that. And I had my little Kilner jar. It was like a simple jar. It had a lid on so you can seal it. But I like those because you can put food in it, you can put coffee in it, whatever it is. And if it breaks, it breaks. It's like $3. It's not the best, but when you're traveling, it's like a bit less stressful, I guess, sometimes just have something small. Anyway, so I had this and we were in a coffee shop. She's like, oh, I should really do that. Like, that's really easy. I should invest in that. But like, oh, I don't know, like, right, people would judge me for having like a reusable whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, well, fine, like you'll get there eventually, kind of thing. And we left it and we didn't talk about it again, but I got a message from her maybe a week ago saying, Izzy, look, I got this
Oh,
reusable flask
yes.
and it's got my matcha in it. And I thought of you today. And thank you so much for like inspiring me to do this. So I was like, oh my God, it was so heartwarming. I loved getting that message. It was so, so, so good.
That
But yeah,
that's
any
everything.
words of encouragement ever to try and help people bring reusable things with them, I'm always down for. I have a little raw cotton thing that has like a straw and a spork in it, which are
Yeah.
super useful.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I love that you made it approachable for her and that like and again, you didn't like put pressure on her. You kind of just let her natural process get to like let her do what she needed to do to get there on her own.
Right.
And and you just kind of just held space. You were that inspiration. And then also someone I think to wrap it up, to have that accountability buddy, but you were
Mhm.
actually just someone that was like a validating person for her rather than like no one gives a shit
Right.
and instead it was like, "Oh no, I'm doing this and I have someone that will actually be proud of me." And like
Yeah.
I don't know, that just like triggers a understanding of like an important part of the whole cycle that is required for people to initiate and go through like, we need a graph of how a person initially the conception of changing a daily habit into something more sustainable and, like, the whole process that they go through to get to, "Now I'm doing it." It
Yeah,
might
I
be help.
love that though. Having proud buddies, not just accountability buddies, but like, I'm
Yes,
proud
yes.
of you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, because it really goes unsung. Everyone that actually makes an effort like people are incentivized through reward. And if you're just
Right.
making a huge effort that again feels like it's accumulating to nothing because everything contradicts itself and it's just all there, like there's no real solutions.
Mm.
Like who am I? What can I do? How can I make a difference? But when you implement some aspect of reward, even if it's just social reward, like social merit, I feel
Mm.
like that is a that's enough for someone to be like, "Oh, I picked up this piece of garbage. Look at me." And
Yeah, for sure. It definitely works on me. I just want to say, like, caveating on what you were saying, I definitely wasn't always like that. Like, I definitely wasn't always as accepting of everything. I've definitely learned to be that way. I feel like not dishonest, but I feel weird sitting here being like, yeah, like I try to hold space for people. I do now, but I definitely didn't always. It's definitely been a journey into figuring out how to convey information to people in a way that's not horrible to hear, I guess.
yeah. That doesn't make you a horrible person trying to be, like, better than everyone as well.
Well, I prefer it when everyone feels like nourished and loved and heard and
Mm.
understood and empowered. And so I think that I've tried to figure out how to, I hope, have conversations with people in a way that makes them feel that way.
Yeah, I think that phase of going through like, for lack of a better word, maybe like the self-righteous aspect, that the self-righteous phase of when you become that needs to be added to the chart of the, like,
Right. Yeah.
sustainability journey, because
Yeah.
like anything, when you become awakened or you become aware of something, you tend to then become the expert on it, and then you also get really excited about wanting to convert everyone, but it's actually just a part of the evolutional journey where you realize, like, you're you're not actually meant to convert anyone, you're just meant to do you, and everything that you do will have its own resonant effect, and that you'll find that the people who want to find you will find you, and that everybody else is kinda none of your business. But, and because then you're rendered again feeling powerless and frustrated, and that energy
Right.
is
Yeah.
actually contractual, it's not expansive, it's not helping people to welcome them into the herd, it's, like,
For
creating
sure.
another point of friction. But I think if you do become a person that's passionate about the whole journey, I think if you're an advocate for anything, you kinda go through that phase where there's more of an aggressive approach to trying to get your point across or to
Mm.
try to help people understand until you realize that it's actually hindering more than it's helping, and that you're the one
Right.
that has to be like, "I'm sorry for being
Yeah.
so overbearing."
Forceful. Yeah.
Very forceful, I may have been very forceful.
Yeah.
And, you can do whatever you want, just know that I'm here if you ever feel inclined to learn more or change anything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's a good way to be. I also love it when you're like so excited to share new sustainability findings with people, or just in general, like excited to share new found information with people. I feel like you say, that links to
Yeah,
the passion.
yeah, yeah, and it's really hard to that part's that's the fun part. It's the part where it's like, I have to really gauge myself from feeling triggered. Like, if eating out for dinner, for example, someone uses these flies are just in my face. Can you not, flies? Yeah, like, going out for dinner and people insisting on getting straws. I'm like, "This is literally the only thing we can do. Like, you don't need a straw," or how
Mm.
easy it and I have to always catch myself from even giving a side eye. Like, it's like, or, like, wanting to order for the whole table, no straws.
Yeah.
It's like a no, I'll order for myself, no straw, and just silently judge, but to also just try to transmute the judgment also, like, actually, like, not even just try to cover it up and pretend you're not being judgmental, but, like, inside myself, be acceptant and just accept everybody, and that it's not my job to police everybody at all, and
No,
and
yeah, it's definitely not your job to police people. But I feel like in that situation, if you're with close friends, I feel like it would be okay to say, I'm feeling judgmental or angry at the thought of you all ordering straws. Would you please do me a solid and not order a straw? Like I've definitely been in that sort of situation before.
Yeah, I've been in that situation a lot, and then there's the times where people are just like, "No, I just don't care." And, like, I want a straw. And and it comes back to more of, like, a self-serving understanding of, like, "Okay, well, how does this affect me when I'm so preoccupied with other people's behavior that because judgment is not a fun feeling inside my
No.
body. And it creates, like, its own level of self-judgment for judging. I'm judging myself for judging
Right.
blah, 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 and then it lowers my energetic frequency.
Mm.
Whereas if I can actively practice, like, okay, well, this person, I'm having dinner with this person for a reason, so that I can practice alchemizing my own levels of self-acceptance of, like, yeah, fair enough. You're completely free to use a straw or get the takeaway container or do all of these things because in their mind, they have a completely different philosophy or value
Mm.
system that is not my place to try and convince them. I can
Mm.
share my own, and if things land, then that's great. But ultimately, it's keeping myself in check. It just adds to my stress if I think that by the side eye or the judging of the other person, or even like the asking of like, please, please don't get a straw because it
Mm.
will make me feel better. That in itself is kind of like my own impulse to control
Yeah.
versus just allow and then trust whatever I'm doing will have its ripple effect in its own way, even if I can't see it directly in front of me.
Yeah, you never know. That friend might come to you in a year and say, "Oh, you inspired me to get an aluminium straw."
Yeah, exactly. And especially because you didn't force me not to get one that time. And
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
so graceful about it. I just want
yeah,
grace.
yeah, exactly. I think it's more productive in the long term, even though it's super frustrating in the short term. You've
I
got to
feel
hope.
it.
And if it's not, then that person's never going to change anyway, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the right attitude to have, but
Yeah, well, some people are designed to not change so that other people change even more because of they that's again like this philosophical debate of duality and all these things of like what is everything is perfect and where we need the negative for the positive and all of that annoying stuff that gets really layered and it's hard to nail down anything.
I'd love to hear, is there something like top of mind to you right now that comes to mind going off of duality and sustainability?
Well, I guess the paradox of life and that the inclination to focus on the negatives, it feels like that's necessary because otherwise we all are just living with our heads in the sand. However, at the same time, it's really important, in my opinion, to trust that because we're in, well, I think we're in a duality. Not really sure some days. It's always changing. Then the simulation and okay, I don't know, God, who's paying attention? Like who's supervising this whole experiment? I would really like them to check in on us. But in the concept of duality, yeah, that there's like kind of this trusting to trust that it is in balance, that whatever absolute corruption and abysmal parts of this world are in our faces and kind of the thing that's used to create more kind of control and divide because all of the negativity is just gets the most attention because it's the loudest.
Mm.
And same with the sustainability movement, that it seems like there's just no end to how problematic it is, and that yeah, that we're kind of just under the thumb of these corporations. But meanwhile, you can, even if it's not as loud or as emotional, simultaneously there is consciousness occurring where there are people whose value systems are shifting on an equal level to the spectrum of what's bad. And that every time I've gotten caught up in trying to be very, yeah, very vigilant about anything, the duality slaps me in the face, because irony is always there waiting to show you that, like, just as much as you're endeavoring to make this great through maybe force and control or stress or fear or scarcity, is creating a counter effect or a cause and effect that is contradicting itself anyway. So I guess I find peace in just relaxing deeper into that acceptance and trust, and like learning more about my personal intuition, that what I'm feeling called to do, I can trust that, and I can trust that it's enough, and I can trust that it's contributing to the balance of everything. And yeah, that the preoccupation with all the bad stuff is a trap, and it is really important for me to kind of find that equilibrium, that it's like, okay, just as bad as everything is, there's just as much good, and I feel called to contribute to the good. Some people feel
Yeah.
called to contribute to the bad, and that's, again, I don't want to judge them, because they're even to the most horrific extent of what this reality can offer is like, whoa, that is bad. But also to kind of divert my attention and focus on like the frequency that I want to emanate and the ways that I want to do it. And doing a little clothing brand is this creative outlet that I currently am really passionate about, and it's like its own spiritual journey of humility and learning the realities of sustainability, and like why nobody wants to do it. Why it's like, oh, I see why no one's doing this. It sucks. It's like so annoying. It would be so much easier to just like cut corners and do everything that's set up efficiently for the systems that are right now. But I guess I love me a struggle. So I'm like over here being like, yeah, we're gonna do this because somehow it's going to change the trajectory of everything. And maybe it will in its own little lane. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. Duality is a complex thing to speak to. So I guess, yeah, that was my philosophical tangent on that.
Thanks for going into that. I was wondering because you'd mentioned it a couple of times. I was like, oh no, I want to know what you think on that. So thanks for going into it. I definitely
Yeah.
think will change things in its own in its little lane, like you said,
Oh,
or
thank
a big
you.
lane.
Thank you. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on like using duality as like the term of like more, that's a bit more existential, even just bringing it into industry. What are
Mm.
your thoughts on that? Of like how you observe the contradictions or the controversy in the fashion industry or the sustainability movement?
Yeah, I think there are definitely loads of contrasts. While you were speaking, a recent example came to mind, and that was so I went to two trade shows within a week of each other, probably 2 weeks ago now. And the first one was in London, and it was called the Future Fabrics Expo. It was set up by the Sustainable Angle, and it basically showcases most of, or many sustainability innovations within the textile space, the dye space, the clothing space, the manufacturing space, everything from kind of like factories in Kenya that are manufacturing using renewable energy or whatever it might be. And so that was really interesting because it gave a lens of, oh, wow, there are some really cool innovations going on at the moment. And some are clearly not as far along in terms of sustainability as others, but it's still great that they're still able to showcase. And you can see some of these bigger brands. Then also there was an innovator table and everything. So you got to see some really cool things that are in the works, like biomaterials and stuff like that. So that's promising to see. And then I kept fangirling. I was like, this is like, you would know, like being Canadian, you know, Canopy, the charity. So the co-founder of Canopy was there, and I literally just fangirled so hard because I'd referenced them in so many research papers, and I'd been to British Columbia and ended up writing a research paper about man-made cellulosic fibers off the back of that, because I could see the deforestation. It was making me sad. So I wanted to learn more about it in terms of the fashion industry. Anyway, so met her. So like that was super cool. And most people there were super enthusiastic and passionate about making this more sustainable product. And even with that, I heard a few criticisms from a couple of people who was like, okay, but you're still kind of pushing things to be made. Like you're still making new things. You're not really reforming the system, which needs to happen. And so that was I was like, okay, yes, criticism, got that, checked that. Overall, I thought it was a great event. And then contrasting to the second fabric trade show that I went to, which was called Premier Vision. It was in Paris, and it's Europe's biggest textile trade show. And the first day of that, so it was a multi-day event. I think I went on 2 or 3 days. But anyway, first day of that, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I'm meeting new people within the sustainability space. There were loads of sustainability chats on the first day. You could see kind of what they thought the best ways so like a load of designers were there and production teams and stuff like that. So they were all there visiting. So the talks were clearly laid out for these people. So they were laying out the basics, kind of what you can do to be more circular, more regenerative, more sustainable, and showing all of the different fabric options and stuff like that, and shouting out some of the producers that were there and suppliers that were there. And so that was interesting on day one. And it was also nice because a couple of the people from the London show were there. So it was kind of catching up and friendly. And I was like, oh, this is fun. But then on the second day, I started the day by going to a trend talk. So kind of what the trend for autumn, winter 2025 was going to be. And it was so infuriating because I was sat there and I was like, okay, so there were so many people sat at that talk too. I don't know if it was just because it was day 2 and more people had time off work or whatever it may be. But so many more people were sat at that talk than any of the other sustainability talks I went to. And most of it, I mean, it's huge. I don't even know how big these rooms were, but they were huge, like massive, 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 several football stadium, huge kind of rooms. And the sustainability section was small. It was to one side, you could walk around it quite quickly. You could see it from kind of one area, whereas all of the conventional stuff was just spread out everywhere. And so then I started getting really worked up because I was like, everyone's just here because of the trend. Like people are interested in coming to this talk because they want to know what the trend's going to be for the following year, so that then they can produce and be on trend and make more money and have more sales and all of this. And as I was walking around the second day, I could see so many more people in the conventional stands. And yes, certainly the sustainability stands had foot traffic. There were definitely people there, but compared to the number of people that were over at the conventional ones, I was enraged. Like I was just walking around, and I ended up having to do a voice note to myself at one point because I was like, I'm going to explode if I don't talk to someone. And even if it's just talking to myself, I can talk to myself, because I was there with a friend as well who is a super cool, awesome person and also awesome handbag designer from LA. And so she was there on business talking to all of the suppliers that she needed to talk to. So I didn't want them to bum her out by being like, I'm enraged. So I was just walking around by myself. But what I gleaned from that is I was like, okay, clearly the financial system has to change because everyone operates on this financial system. And so the market is indicating that these trends, caveat to the trend. The thing that really pissed me off with the trends is that one of them was to look more sustainable, basically. They didn't say that, but that was essentially what it was. It was like natural fibers, but not all of them were natural fibers. They're like polyester things that were made to look like natural fibers. One of the cool things is that they found like different species of cotton that had natural different colors that they kind of wove together. And that I thought was really beautiful and really cool. But there was this whole other section that was just conventional fibers made to look like natural ones. Anyway, so I was thinking, okay, so the financial system needs to change, because without changing that, you're not giving these designers and production teams and financial teams incentive to step away from the conventional super polluting, super toxic fabrics. And then I was also thinking designers also should probably have some way to work with the production teams to figure out what their budget could be to use these preferred materials, and also to be able to work in a space where they don't feel limited, like their creativity is limited enough, having to work within a financial system, so that it doesn't feel even more limited by having this sustainability. I really don't think it's the ceiling. I think it's the floor. Like if you have a sustainability just kind of like nice lake below you, maybe, and then you can kind of like flower out of the lake. I don't think it needs to be seen as kind of like a box that's trapping people in. Um, and so those are kind of the two main, I think there was a third, but I don't remember what it was now, but those are kind of the two main things that came to me in this voice note that I was making. And so like you were saying with duality, I was super pissed off walking around. But then I kind of had this aha moment. And I was like, okay, so then what can I do within my work to help? I mean, big scheme, yes, change the financial system, small scheme, change a few brands so that their designers and their production teams can be more sustainable. And also
Mm.
CEOs, CFOs, whatever, to figure it
Mhm.
out from there. Then I get motivated by it, I guess. But I don't get angry very often. So that's why that came to mind, because it was kind of a rare occurrence.
Yeah, because it was for good reason. It was
Yeah.
like, yeah, absolutely frustrating to see how, I mean, it is very frustrating to see how powerless we all are. Like, even if we want to be sustainability inclined, like you're saying, the financial system, like our lives, our livelihood, our survival is dependent on participating in this capitalist model that it's all about scale and growth and not preservation or conservation.
Right.
Um, and I guess, yeah, being in such a industry recognized conference that you were staring at basically the temperature of where we're at with sustainability consciousness, and that you're the only person, you of thousands of people were like, "No, this is fine. What? This is a problem." Like, you're the one who was like, "No, this is ridiculous." And, yeah, I guess the leaders are just not a part of the pack. Like, they're just few among the many. So, I think it's a good sign that you had those alarms firing. That's a good indication that you're intact and that, that your mission is on the right track. Because if clearly it's not a common occurrence for someone to have that realization even, or to even wanna have that realization. Because everyone's like, "No, I like my blind spots, keep them where they are, 'cause I've got too much on my plate as it is."
Mm.
But, that actually leads me to another question that I wanted to
Oh,
ask
yeah.
you, which is what your thoughts are on how you would consult a business who's a product-based business,
Mhm.
who's endeavoring to be sustainable, but even sustainable materials, sustainable, we'll say, like, anything produced, as you mentioned, is already creating that paradox. For myself, for example, like my brand, I really want to endorse minimal consumption, responsible purchasing, helping people to understand how you don't need to impulsively buy things to feel good, that is more, it's like a holistic job. It's an inside job to that no amount of clothing is going to make you feel good about yourself, and that actually the more you feel good about yourself, the more you really cherish and treasure the things that you have, because they're actually like a part of you. And when you really like you, then you're like, no, this is, so you're less inclined to need just like more disposable stuff to overcompensate for whatever void a person might be feeling. And that void is what is really capitalized on. Like, that's what obviously marketing is over time has been specifically geared to helping people feel bad about themselves so that they purchase things that they don't need. And everyone's getting rich over it.
Mm.
very rich. So it's also a hard sell to try and encourage an alternative. But back to just like someone who's trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
wanting to get their product out there, wanting to that for their business to work, they do need to sell
Mhm.
things. But then again, it conflicts with that desire to be like, "Okay, I wanna sell you this, but don't buy it because you don't need it." What are your thoughts on consulting a business, kind of trying to figure that out?
Yeah. Well, I get why it would feel maybe hypocritical to be doing it from because I know how like curious and passionate you are about it. You must be like, I would rather not have to sell anything at all. But the way that I see it, and I think part of the reason why, so my agency logo is kind of like a deconstructed and reconstructed yin and yang symbol. So duality again.
Amazing.
Anyway,
I love that.
but because I think that if people like you, well, I guess okay, so just the base. I think that products are always going to exist, and I think people are always going to want to buy things. And so, how do you make that more sustainable? And so, I think that if people like you aren't supported in making a more sustainable brand, then the system won't change because nobody's going to be willing to try to make a more sustainable brand and to willing to work with factories and with producers to kind of change the supply chain. And so I think that if you're not there or if another brand isn't there, then they're just going to continue business as usual without having the impetus to change. And so they're incentivized by your sales. And so if you're able to sell more, then the supply chain gets made up in a better way. So that's how I see it.
I like
But
that. Thank you. Will you text that to me? I need to, like, read that every week. Like, "Yes, this is why you're doing it."
yeah, because otherwise I don't think there's any motivation to change. And I've thought about it a lot. And every time I try to talk myself out of it, I realize that I think I'm taking an easy way out because I don't think that it's actually facing the challenge or the problem head on.
I I'm really glad that you've come to terms with that and that you, yeah, could articulate that to me. I come to those same understandings, but just the way you said it was really, really good. Good to take that in.
Thanks. It reminds me a lot also of I've had these thoughts a lot, but I didn't realize that there was a term around it, but deep ecology. Have you heard of it?
Mm,
It's basically kind of what we're talking about, but it's like the spiritual side of ecology. So like why people feel the urge to consume more is because, or one of the reasons could be that they're not as spiritually in tune with themselves. And so there's this whole field that's kind of spun off that's become deep ecology. And I have been loving reading more about
yeah,
that because I've
that
been having these thoughts for a couple of years, but I didn't realize that there was a term around it and that there are people writing actively in this space. And I found out
also
about it
text.
through, sorry, what?
Also text that to me. Yes,
Yeah, I
that's
will do. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. I found
I
out about it through Willow. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I think it's Deffenbow or Deffenbow, but she's the co-founder of Atmos, that like very beautiful magazine publication, but also online publication. And I went to her book opening a few months ago, and she read a passage from her book. And so I was like, I would love to buy this book. Like one of my only book purchases that was new. Usually I always find them secondhand. But anyway, within that, there are some beautiful stories about deep ecology. And so I've been really enjoying reading those. And those
well,
those little things I find very like they're like little gifts to read and you just feel good within yourself again.
yeah, I feel that. I love the term because that exactly
Mhm.
giving language to something that I also recognize as so in my own personal journey of becoming a whole person and in my younger years feeling so much inadequacy that buying something new or trying to cover up my insecurities with some nice outfit or something like that was often often very tied into the place I was spiritually and mentally and emotionally. And I guess coming out the other end of that, just having a lot of understanding of how how it's all correlated. And yeah, that deep ecology is like a science that I would actually like to contribute to some of the the information that's out there. I'll
Yeah.
definitely track her down and get that book as well. I'll purchase her book too.
Yeah. I'll send you the link. I'll find the name as well. I can't remember what it's called now, but I'll definitely find the name. But yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. I think we've all, or many, many, many of us have all been through that kind of journey. And so I think that that's also what's so beautiful because then people can come together and come share their experiences. And it's again, like this isn't, we're not trying to be up on a pedestal or whatever. Like this is just like, this is life. Like this is like the journey.
Mhm.
And if you want to go in that direction and figure out kind of where you are in that journey, then have a chat, you know?
That's exactly right. Exactly. Find others who are also feeling confused about it all to start with, and that there are
Yeah,
people that have come before you that know a little bit more that could help you along instead of trying to figure it out all out on your own.
totally.
That's really an important part of the whole thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Community is so beautiful and so needed.
Yeah. Yes. I'm so excited for the directions that you're going to take your community, and that hopefully we can find opportunities to collaborate on community building.
I would love that.
Given that we're purists and we're hard to come to, so we should probably stick together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be so fun. I would love to do some kind of community building with you.
Yes.
And on that also, I feel like we can't end the podcast without shouting out your beautiful shirt, which is Koiwolf, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
I love it.
This is the boyfriend shirt.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
So yeah, it's cotton made from Mexico. It is not 100% sustainable cotton, but it is natural fiber, and it's currently this beautiful traditional Mexican cotton. They have like great fabrics here that are natural, but I can't say for certain what their production chain actually goes through because I'm assuming it's completely conventional. But for my own business journey, have had to come to terms with the realities of entering a market with the capital that I had and how to be able to support myself and my business moving forward, and accepting that parts of that are just not going to be able to be perfect. And I had to work with what I had access to. And so at this point, they're currently cotton, conventional cotton, which I still think is better than synthetic clothing,
Mhm.
but also with the vision to transition to hemp at some point in the very near future, once there's a bit more profitable momentum going, just like a whole other conversation on how to like make a startup business work. But I would love
Yeah.
more insights from you,
I
especially another time or something, or now even.
Yeah, for sure. Another time for more in-depth insights for sure. But I did do some Googling because I remembered you saying that it was conventional cotton. And it turns out that Mexico has the most amount of wild cotton varieties, which I thought was quite cool. And then Australia is close behind it. But I thought that
Mhm.
that was really awesome. I don't know if it's possible
Yeah,
to source wild cotton, but how cool would that be? And
there.
then,
Go
yeah, sorry, no, 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 go.
Well, I was just gonna say that the fabric, the cotton that I worked with was the big inspiration behind my brand, because it was this beautiful, like it traditionally there's the muslin
Mhm,
cotton, but
mhm.
it's like that but thicker and higher quality. And so you could actually make stuff out of it.
Yeah,
And then there's like these other ranges, which I'm assuming come from maybe the range of the cotton species that are here. The only part is I would be shocked if they were doing anything sustainably to
yeah,
harvest it. Because I mean, even for Mexico, it's just like it's so expensive to do anything ethically, and Mexico is a third world country.
mm,
And they do have a lot of regenerative cotton sources. They're in Oaxaca. They're just also very high price points to
mm,
build a small business off of. So,
yeah.
um once I get there, to that side, then I'll again be able to be another person that's like, okay, this is how you do it, or this is how you can enter a market with this
Yeah.
amount of capital, or like, yeah, some kind of step plan. I think that one day you could also help me with like a with that document that helps the person just understand how to get their business from well, that's literally what you're creating. So
Yeah,
I'll
for
look.
sure. But also, I think like that's what we were saying earlier about living in a financial system. And sadly, it's not set out to support everyone at the moment. But as more cash comes in, you can then reinvest it in ways that better align with your values.
Yes, that's the idea. And that's also just kind of, again, coming to terms with it, just accepting it and being like, okay, yeah, this is what I can work with. And rather than
Mm,
focusing on it being inefficient and like focusing on the inefficiencies, basically.
yeah.
That doesn't help.
No, I would love to create a pot which was like cool startups that want to be regenerative and then cool suppliers that are regenerative and then somehow just allow them all to collaborate. I think that would be awesome. Super
Yes, I
awesome.
would definitely help build that because
Yeah.
that yes, everyone share all the secrets and just everyone figure out how we can all collaborate.
Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with me. I can't
Thank
believe this is
you.
only our second ever chat. I feel like we could literally talk forever.
Yeah, I hope we do it again. I would like
Yeah,
that.
that would be really fun.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.